All right, deep diving friend, are you ready to dive into something we all use but don't really think much about?
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, today we are going to tackle the very idea of reason.
Ooh.
Okay?
Yeah.
How has our understanding of what reason even is changed over time? And honestly, I'm kind of fascinated to find out myself.
Yeah, because we just kind of take it for granted, don't we?
Totally. And get this, we are going to be using excerpts from Basic Systematischer Theologie by Martin Dürnberger to help guide our deep dive today.
Oh, excellent. A little light reading for the deep dive.
Always. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride through history. We're talking ancient Greece, Enlightenment, the whole shebang.
All right, let's go.
Okay,
Yeah.
So let's fire up our imaginations for a second and totally picture ancient Greece.
Okay, I can do that.
Right. Philosophers like Plato just hanging out in the town square, debating.
Togas and sandals.
Exactly. And they were all about this thing called speculative reason.
Speculative reason.
Yeah. So basically they thought you could use reason to unlock the universe's secrets.
So instead of, scientific experiments, they're just going to use their brains.
Well, yeah, kind of. They believed reason could reveal the true nature of reality, even stuff we couldn't see or touch.
So it's all about using your mind to go beyond the physical world.
Right. It's like when you imagine a perfect circle, you can picture it in your head, even though every circle you've ever drawn is probably a bit wonky.
Exactly. You've got the right idea. That's the heart of speculative reason.
So, okay, we've got the Greeks figuring out perfect forms with their minds, right? Now, fast forward a few centuries, Christianity comes into the picture.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because now you might think faith and reason are total opposites.
Yeah.
But surprise, early Christians actually found a way to weave them together.
Oh, really? How so?
So thinkers like Augustine saw the order and beauty of the universe as proof of God's design. The laws of nature, the harmony of everything, it all pointed towards a divine intelligence behind it all.
It's like they looked at the universe and saw this perfectly crafted clock and were like, whoa, there must be a brilliant clockmaker behind this.
Right. It's like the universe was showing evidence of reason. And they thought that because our minds could grasp that reason, it meant that our capacity for reason was a reflection of God's own rationality.
Whoa, so our brains are like mini-me versions of the cosmic mind.
Right. That's a pretty wild thought.
That is wild.
But wait, there's a plot twist coming, because things are about to get really interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
So in the late Middle Ages, this new idea pops up, and it throws a wrench in this whole neat picture of a perfectly ordered logical universe.
Well, what is it?
It's called voluntarism.
Voluntarism. Okay, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, and it kind of shakes things up.
All right, well, tell me more. How does it shake things up?
So up until this point, even God was seen as being bound by reason.
Oh, interesting.
Right, it was like this ultimate set of rules even God had to follow. But then the voluntarists were like, hold on a minute. What if God's power isn't limited by logic as we understand it? What if he just decides what's true?
Whoa, okay, hold on. So you're saying that those perfect forms the Greeks were so into, maybe they weren't some universal truth?
Yeah.
But just God's design choices?
Exactly. It was like God could have gone with a square instead of a circle just because he felt like it.
Just to mix it up a bit.
Right.
Wow.
So voluntarism said that God's will was the ultimate foundation of reality, not some pre-existing logic.
Okay, so that is mind-blowing, because does that mean then that everything we think of as logical, as ordered, as reasonable could just be completely arbitrary?
Well,
a product of God's free will?
Yeah, basically.
Wow, that makes you question everything, doesn't it?
Right. It's like what we think is reasonable might not be so straightforward after all.
Yeah, it feels like the ground is shifting a little bit here.
Totally. And this is just the beginning.
It's like someone just shook up the snow globe of reason,
Right. And you know what's crazy? This shaking up kind of continues into the Enlightenment.
Oh, the Enlightenment? Here we go.
I know, right? Whigs, revolutions, people questioning everything.
Yeah, it's like the universe hit puberty.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how does reason change during this time? What's the new upgrade?
Well, you've got thinkers like Descartes and Hume, and they're still into reason, but they kind of shift the focus.
Okay. In what way?
So instead of just trying to peek into the heavens for these perfect forms, they're like, let's get real. Let's use reason to examine the world around us.
So it's less about abstract ideas and more about actually looking at the evidence?
Yeah. Observation, experience, that kind of thing.
Okay. I can dig it.
So Descartes, he was really obsessed with finding absolute certainty. He wanted to find something about knowledge that couldn't be doubted no matter what.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, Maybe my senses are lying to me. Maybe there's an evil genius tricking me. But there's one thing I know for sure I'm thinking, so I must exist.
Exactly. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
And that was like his big breakthrough.
It was. And notice how it's not about like tapping into some big cosmic reason out there anymore.
Right.
It's about the power of our own minds to doubt, to question, to figure things out for ourselves.
Okay, so it becomes more personal almost.
In a way, yes. And then Hume comes along and takes this whole empirical thing even further.
Empirical meaning like based on experience, right?
Exactly. And Hume's like, hold up. We see lightning and then we hear thunder, but can we really be sure that the lightning causes the thunder?
Oh, interesting, because they always happen together. But does that really mean one causes the other?
Right. Good point. Maybe we just assume a connection because we're so used to seeing them that way.
Wow, so we could be totally misinterpreting things.
We could be. Hume's basically telling us to be careful about our assumptions, to really base our understanding on what we can observe and analyze critically.
So instead of blindly accepting reason as this like prepackaged truth delivered from on high, we're now supposed to be like scientists testing and questioning everything.
That's the idea. It becomes much more active, much more engaged.
I like it. So where does that leave us?
Well, that brings us to Kant, who's always trying to find a balance between different ideas.
Right, Kant, the great philosophical peacemaker.
Exactly. So he's looking at all this and saying, okay, we don't experience reality directly. Our minds kind of filter everything through our own categories and perceptions.
Where like we're wearing these special glasses that color how we see the world.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Kant doesn't say that means reason is useless. He just thinks we need to be humble about it, recognize its limits.
Okay, so where does reason fit in then?
So for Kant, reason's job isn't about finding some ultimate truth out there. It's about examining our beliefs, justifying our judgments, trying to build a picture of the world that makes sense, even if it's always a work in progress.
So it's less about, I've got it all figured out, and more about, given what I know right now, how can I make sense of things?
Exactly. It's a more nuanced, self-aware approach to reason, and it lays the groundwork for even more radical ideas in the 20th century.
Oh boy, the 20th century. I feel like that's when things really get wild.
Oh, you have no idea. It's not just about questioning assumptions anymore. It's like someone flipped the whole game board over.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued what happens.
Well, this whole idea of a single universal reason, it gets totally challenged. Like, what if being rational isn't some objective standard, but something that's deeply influenced by our culture, our language, even our own hidden biases?
So all this time we thought we were being totally logical, but maybe we were just following the rules of the game we were taught to play without even realizing it.
That's the question, isn't it? Exactly. And, that's where someone like Nietzsche really comes in. Like, he starts shaking things up even more.
Nietzsche, yeah, he always brings the intensity.
Right. He was, like, super suspicious of anything that claimed to be, like, the absolute truth.
Okay, so what was his beef with reason then?
Well, he saw a lot of what people called reason as this disguised will to power.
Okay, hold on. Got to pause you there for a sec. Will to power. It sounds kind of ominous. What does Nietzsche mean by that?
So basically, it's this idea that all living things, humans especially, we're all driven by this desire to, like, grow, to have influence, to, have power.
Okay, I get that. Everyone wants to feel important.
Right. And here's the thing. Nietzsche's saying, we often use reason not to find some objective truth, but to justify our own desires.
Oh, wow. So we're not as objective as we think we are.
Not always, no. And that's what makes Nietzsche so insightful and provocative.
Because he's saying that sometimes our reasoning is actually driven by what we want to be true, not necessarily what is true.
Exactly. It's like, I want this to be true, therefore I'm going to reason my way to make it true.
Wow, that's kind of deep.
Right. And it leads to some really interesting questions. Like, how do we even know what's truly right or wrong if reason can be used to justify pretty much anything?
Yeah. That's a tough one. And does that mean there's no such thing as objectivity? Like, are we all just trapped in our own little subjective bubbles?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's tempting to just throw in the towel and say, well, everyone's got their own truth.
Right. Like, who's to say what's really rational?
But thankfully, it's not quite that bleak. Just because we realize reason isn't perfect doesn't mean we should abandon it altogether.
Okay, so it's not about ditching reason entirely. It's more like we need to be aware of its limits.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Just because we know doctors aren't perfect and hospitals aren't perfectly sterile doesn't mean we should just start having surgeries in a dirty bathroom.
Okay, yeah. I'm definitely not down for that.
Right. We can acknowledge the flaws, the limitations, without giving up on the whole system.
Oh, yeah, that's a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this whole messy landscape of reason? It's like we need a good map and compass to find our way.
And that's where those different types of rationality can come in handy. Remember Ghost's Path? He was all about asking, are we trying to describe something accurately or evaluate it, or are we trying to understand it or justify an action?
Right. So it's not just about being rational. We need to be more specific about what we're trying to do with our reasoning.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really practical for all of us, because when we understand how reason itself has been understood and debated throughout history, it lets us engage with any belief system, even our own, with more awareness.
It's like we've leveled up our thinking. We're not just taking information at face value anymore. We're questioning the assumptions behind it.
Right. We're becoming more critical thinkers, more aware of our own biases, and that's what Dürnberger wants us to wrestle with.
He's not saying reason is bad. He's just saying don't be afraid to question it.
Exactly. Like, is it always the best guide for life? Is there a danger in overthinking everything?
It's like that saying, sometimes we need to lead with our hearts, not just our heads.
Yes. Maybe true wisdom means holding our beliefs a little less tightly, acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
And open to the mystery of it all.
Exactly. And maybe that's the most rational thing we can do.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of reason. We've covered a lot of ground today, from ancient Greece to the Enlightenment to some pretty mind-bending 20th century thought.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But I think we've gained some valuable insights along the way about the nature of belief, the power and limits of reason, and the importance of staying curious.
And let's not forget humble.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. So to all our deep diving friends out there, thank you for joining us on this adventure. And remember, keep those minds curious and those questions coming. Until next time.